Then there's foreign policy. South Korea's military tells NBC News that North Korea held a massive live-fire military exercise overnight. The drill took place in an eastern coastal town. It was meant to mark the 85th anniversary of the founding of North Korea's military. Meanwhile, during a meeting at the White House, President Trump urged representatives of the United Nations Security Council to adopt new sanctions on North Korea.
The status quo in North Korea is also unacceptable, and the Council must be prepared to impose additional and stronger sanctions on North Korean nuclear and ballistic missile programs. This is a real threat to the world, whether we want to talk about it or not. North Korea is a big world problem, and it's a problem we have to finally solve. People have put blindfolds on for decades, and now it's time to solve the problem.
Amid the rising tensions over North Korea, the Trump administration says it will host a rare briefing at the White House tomorrow for all 100 members of the Senate. Meanwhile, China's president is urging President Trump to take a restrained approach to dealing with North Korea and avoid any back and forth with the regime's unpredictable leader. President Xi and President Trump spoke yesterday by phone, their third conversation in recent weeks. Joining us now, columnist for the Daily Beast, Gordon Chang. He's the author of the books The Coming Collapse of China and Nuclear Showdown, North Korea Takes on the World. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Gordon, much to be concerned about, but one thing that at least we can take a little bit of solace in is the fact that the presidents of our country and China seem to be communicating a great deal. And it seems, again, China applying pressure and telling both sides just stay calm.
Well, that is a good thing, because if there's a solution, it is going to run through Beijing. But China has actually done a number of things which have undercut the idea of their putting pressure on North Korea. So, for instance, on February 18th, they announced the ban on purchase of coal for the rest of the year. But in February, March, and April, there have been North Korean ships unloading coal in Chinese ports. And so I think that President Trump needs to continue to work with Xi Jinping, putting more pressure on China, because if we do that, then possibly there's a solution. And the one thing that is a real concern is that there are reports that China is moving mechanized units to the North Korean border. Now, mechanized units are not used to defend the Chinese border. They'd be used to go into North Korea. And there's a real sense that the North Korean regime right now is unstable, and that could change every calculus.
So you hear the Chinese leader telling President Trump to be careful of too much back and forth. What is he getting at there, and is he concerned a little bit about the two interacting too much?
Yeah, I think that what the Chinese are worried about is internal stability in North Korea. We've seen evidence, for instance, gas prices shooting up over 80% last week. That is an indication that the economy is not as good as it appears. And so you've got all these things, you put them together, it indicates that the regime is in a state of flux, which means that Kim Jong-un, the ruler there, could do things which would surprise us, because probably his threshold of risk is pretty low. And so that is, of course, going to change everything if the United States and China have to think about an imploding North Korea rather than a strong one.
All right, Steve.
Yeah, and Gordon, you mentioned that the North Korean regime is unstable, and that family has been running the country for so long, and it's so mysterious. Do you have any sense, if the regime were to fall somehow, what would come next? Is that a situation where it could get worse?
Yes, that is definitely a situation where things could get worse, because the Chinese are going to probably drive south. The South Koreans are not going to want Beijing to control the northern half of the Korean peninsula. So we could very well see South Korea and the U.S. move north. Everyone wants to secure loose nuclear weapons. I think the Chinese also want to take Pyongyang because they want the archives. They do not want the world to know about their complicity with the North Korean regime and their support of the ballistic missile program there. So there's a lot of conflicting interests. And unfortunately, over the course of the last 5 or so years, China has not been willing to talk to the U.S. about what happens when North Korea falls apart. So this is really a big unknown, because there really haven't been those conversations that we need with Beijing in order to make sure the situation can be managed.
Gordon Chang, thank you very much.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.